Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Voices in Education by Showbie. My name is Abdul Chohan. I'm the Vice President of Learning at Showbie. And today we have two guests from the Laidlaw Trust. We have Sally Newton, who's the CEO. Welcome, Sally. And we have Paul Tullock, who is the Director of PedTech and Innovation. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul.
Great to have you here. I kind of wanted just to start off with you as people. Where did you start off? You know, how did you get into education? What are there's always stories behind people. So let's start off. Sally, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up here?
Oh, well, I was always destined to be in education. So I went straight from education back into education. My dad was a teacher. My dad was my favourite person in the world. You hear people talk about how inspirational their parents were. I mean, I can't say enough how much of a,
Was he primary or secondary?
So he was special school secondary, and I spent a lot of time. You know, back in the day when you were allowed to go on school trips with your parents. I mean, what was that about? But yeah, so we went. You know, I went with his school to France, to different residentials. I was always in there doing volunteering work. I just loved watching young people learn, and I knew from really, really early on that I wanted to be a teacher, and then went straight from university straight into teaching on that sort of DFE fast track program as was then. So quite quickly into leadership, and then just really, really caught the bug. And then I was really lucky because in one of my headships, I had a chair of governors who was from a business background, and she mentored me in the most exceptional way, and just really brought those two worlds of kind of business and education together for me, and hence just doing what I absolutely love to do. It's a privilege. Wow.
And always in the Northeast?
Always in the Northeast, yeah.
So really good understanding of that area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
can't follow that, mate.
Mr. Tullock,
that was
tell
impressive. So I came from a very working class background. First person to go to university in our family. Had no idea what I wanted to do when I left. I kind of did finance because I was always very good at maths and things like that. And then I went on a outdoor residential holiday as a volunteer with some underprivileged kids from Edinburgh, and was told that I needed to be working with children. So I basically ended up applying on a skit course to become a primary school teacher. And my sort of goal was to make sure that no child had the same experience that I had, because I didn't enjoy school. So I started working with year one, with the really small ones. And then I got really interested in how we could use technology to support all learners, because I had a very unique child who was wonderful, and I'll always remember him to this day. But he was written off by a lot of staff, and it took me about 4 weeks into teaching to realise that he just couldn't access what he was doing. So I needed to help him. So I went out of my way to find things that would help him. And then I became absolutely fascinated. I ended up teaching every year group in primary school. Then I became an Apple Distinguished Educator in 2017 because I was so immersed in how the iPads could change learning. Then I became an Apple Professional Learning Specialist. And then I left education in 2020 during COVID to go and support other schools and trusts. But I really missed the day-to-day, making that difference in the projects and how we could impact in schools. And then the opportunity came and worked with Laidlaw Schools Trust, and I knew from reading the advert that the values of the trust matched my own values of what I thought education should be. And from there, it's been a really exciting journey for the past 2 years.
Amazing. I've got a real soft spot for the Northeast because I went to university in Sunderland. So,
greatest team on earth.
Yeah.
Well,
not even the greatest team in the Northeast, but
I'm not going to say anything. But for sure, definitely a soft spot for the Northeast. I do remember kind of university. A friend of mine became a teacher there as well. And I remember him coming back telling us stories about the classroom and education and so on. But one thing's for sure, educators are always passionate about what they do, right? Passionate about children, passionate about impact, wanting to make a difference and so on. So Sally, coming back to you, Laidlaw Trust, it's got a powerful mission. Tell us a little bit about the curriculum, like how it's kind of designed to support that social mobility, and particularly in the communities that you serve. Because I think a lot of the audience for Showbie as well, and for the podcast, are not just in the UK, but they're international as well. So kind of understanding that local context is actually quite important. And I think sometimes Northeast is not a place that everybody kind of travels to all the time, so kind of gets an understanding of. So it'd be really great to understand from you, like the vision and, what does that local context look like?
Yeah, and I think it's important as well for people beyond the Northeast and within the Northeast, both nationally and internationally, to recognise that when we talk about the Northeast, we can't make generalistic assumptions about the whole of the Northeast. It's very nuanced in terms of its differences, and we really see that as a trust. So we have 11 academies. We serve children from 2 years old up to 19. And we have 3 clusters. So we have children from the Durham area, children from the Sunderland area, children from the Newcastle area. And they're quite close in proximity. And when we talk about curriculum design, it might be really simplistic to think as a trust that we could put in a one-size-fits-all. We can't do that. We've got schools in Newcastle where there are 53 different languages spoken, the most vibrant multicultural communities. Joyful, aren't they, Paul?
Yeah,
I mean,
amazing.
just so amazing. But, coupled with 3/4 of those children in Newcastle are in deep poverty, entitled to free school meals. And then we've got our children from Sunderland, where we've got 99.9% white British. We have to work really, really hard there to create that diversity, to make sure they're not open to, real threats from far right behaviours, because they're just not immersed in a multicultural society there. And then in Durham, different again, slightly more affluent, slightly more advantaged, you might say, but really high levels of special educational needs, and different needs as well. So when we think about it, it will be very easy for me as CEO, and I know CEOs who do this, and I know CEOs who do this really successfully, who create a curriculum where that they say things like every classroom is the same and it's just on a different corridor. I can't do that. I simply can't do that. Might be easier if I could sometimes, but we need to meet the needs of our communities. But then we need to do it under a really values-driven methodology where we all believe the same. That's really deep-rooted, and that's where the mission comes in around transforming lives through extraordinary education. And it needs to be extraordinary, Abdul. It needs to be something different. It needs to be something that isn't just loosely based on compliance and exam results. And so we start with a curriculum framework around, securing academic excellence. We know academic qualifications are the route to opening doors, but we know for our children that that's not the only thing that they're going to need. So the second element around that is building tomorrow's healthy, confident, productive citizens. And if not us, then who is going to do that for our young people? And then the third element to our curriculum in its broadest sense is about delivering transformational change. So really looking at that sort of third and fourth multi-generational unemployment. How will we be the catalyst to shape that change moving forward? So we have had to be brave in our curriculum choices and in our curriculum model. We've had to make sure, of course, that every child leaves us with strong foundational skills, strong foundational knowledge across subjects, but also every child will have a digital qualification. And call that gaming, if you want to call it gaming. But what we call it is delivering on a mission to make sure that children have the skills that they need to progress into multifunctional destinations. And critically, that our children leave us with a sense of agency. And a sense of independence and a sense of commitment to wanting to do something for the wider world. So as you'd expect in our context, our curriculum does include really structured reading programmes, right from early years through to post-16. Got high levels of mobility and low levels of literacy on entry often that need to be tackled before we can get any curriculum
across
access.
the communities in terms of literacy?
Yeah. And we're seeing, well, certainly with a lot of our younger children, the school readiness survey just came out last week again. And why were we shocked that children still aren't ready to start school? And one of our, biggest drivers, and we'll come on to talk about it in the role of the Laidlaw Foundation, is that we're offering an equitable 30-hour access to early years education for our children to really secure those fundamentals in reading. And coupled with that is, a strong sense of oracy, rhetoric. We know that no matter what sort of qualifications our children get, they need to have that confidence and independence to be able to walk into any room, anywhere, and be able to hold their own. And critically, creating, the range of co-curricular and enrichment opportunities that are usually often seen in independent schools.
True.
We need to do that. We're under no illusions that our children aren't necessarily afforded the opportunities that, for example, my children are or Paul's children are, in terms of the range of things that they access. So again, if not us, then who? So critically in our curriculum as well, we parallel high academic success with daily character skills lessons. And I often use the analogy that we wouldn't just, expect that a year 4 pupil would learn how to do long division by osmosis. We'd model it, we'd scaffold it, we'd let them try it independently. We'd have a video on Showbie so they could address misconceptions, revisit learning, build on secure learning blocks. But sometimes things like resilience, teamwork, adaptation, I'm not sure how we're just expecting children to pick this up if we don't teach it explicitly. So we do at Laidlaw Schools Trust. And those essential character skills, I get really irritated when people describe them as soft skills. There couldn't be any more powerful skills, so that they're certainly not soft. But we give them as much ownership, as much emphasis in our curriculum as we do on the academic side, and that's by doing it daily. And then diversity, representation, they're all baked into our curriculum choices, and I'm really, really clear about that our children need to see themselves in what they read and what they learn, and they also need to be equipped to navigate that wider world and with real empathy, but real ambition as well. And finally, we're unapologetically focused on destinations. And we start with the destinations. We look at the local economy. We look at, for example, the North East Combined Authorities Growth Plan over the next 10, 20 years. We look at the rising tech industries. We know where successful destinations are regionally and nationally. And then we map our curriculum accordingly. And track back from those destinations to make sure all of our learners have a visible pathway, whether that's into higher education, apprenticeships, into employment, so that everybody has a real sense of destination and achievement. And one of the reasons that we need to do that, and I've said it before, Abdul, and I may well have said it to you, but I will say it again, and it's about a shrug. It's about when I was in one of our secondary academies and I was chatting to a year 9 boy who's absolutely great. And I said to him, what's your thoughts? What are you going to do when you leave? He just looked at me and shrugged. And that shrug will always stay with me. And it doesn't speak about what he is like as an individual. He's bright, he's funny, he's capable. But what it speaks to is that the curriculum wasn't at that time feeling relevant or feeling like it was any part of his future. And that moment said everything. And that moment said to us that we needed to do things differently. Start with the destination, track back, make it relevant, make it purposeful, and we'll see less of that.
Look, that I love the fact that it's that destination based. It's such a powerful thing. Wherever you go in the world right now, you ask a student that's about to leave school, what do you want to do when you leave? They have absolutely no idea. It's never been discussed. They've never really even thought about it. They don't know any information about what's out there and so on. The focus has purely been on passing that exam.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And I must say, I am a little bit disappointed with the curriculum reform, if I can say that, because I don't think it's about tinkering around the edges of this curriculum, of this national curriculum. I don't think it's about renaming the EBAC as something else. I think it's really got to be about fundamentally, rethinking what we teach, how we teach it, and crucially, why it matters to these young people. Of what relevance is it that we're teaching this subject? I think curriculum will always be the most powerful tool for social mobility. It's just how brave trusts, academies, schools are willing to be with a sort of accountability framework such as ours at the moment, which I won't get into.
And the government, I suppose, as well, in terms of, kind of bravery on their part. Okay, over to Paul. I'm going to ask you this. But feel free to chip in, Sally, as well, yeah. Because you kind of covered a few things that I was going to ask. You guys have recently adopted Showbie. There are a lot of learning platforms and stuff that's out there, a lot of different types of technology that's out there as well. But how do you then support that changing journey to ensure that no one's left behind? And obviously, when schools, and I'm talking about this from, there was a Ministry of Education I was speaking to the week before, just 2 weeks ago. And, one of the things that the lady there was talking about was everybody's at different stages. You've got teachers that have a degree of digital maturity, others don't. Some are really scared of it. Some are kind of can't wait to get on to the next thing. And then the reality is that there's so many different tools out there that do similar things and so on. How do we kind of, what do we focus on in terms of creating that digital maturity in staff, building consistency and supporting that journey of change?
I think it's really important that when we started, it wasn't about flashy rollout, and it wasn't about using the first tool or the best tool or the in-trend tool, so to speak. So it's all about impact, and we need to get that right, and it's all about the pedagogy first. So for the first couple of months, we didn't actually do anything, did we?
No.
We just we met our schools, we went and visited, we talked to staff, we talked to students, we talked about their successes, their challenges, what they needed to do, what the students wanted to do, what we thought might support the students. And I think it's really important that it has to come from pedagogy first, which is why we changed our tact from EdTech to PedTech straight away. It's not what we do. It's not what we're choosing. It's not how we do it. It's why we're doing it. All of our schools are at different stages. So we have some schools that have had iPad before. They've been using Showbie before. They're at various levels. We have some schools that, as has been said, have got totally different needs, very diverse cohorts, totally different stages. And it's important that we meet the schools where they are. We've really stripped that back because, as you know, in Showbie, there's lots of fantastic tools, but we need to make that consistent. And I think it comes back to, there's a phrase that always stays with me. And I think it's yours. It's, let's see if I can get this right. Good schools.
Good schools are consistent.
Outstanding schools are consistently good. And I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to make sure every student's getting the same level, whether they're in English, maths, science, whether they're in primary, whether they're in secondary, they're getting the same level that meets their needs. And I think that's where we're quite lucky, as in we've put in a foundation. We've really looked at what our lessons look like, what we want our teaching model to look like, and what we want our learning to look like. And we've stripped that back. And we've really thought about how that looks inside Showbie and what the best tools are for us that we can use. So we have a very consistent approach with expectations about what we expect to be inside of Showbie. Layered with that is the tools that we can use to adapt the teaching as we go, the assessment features that help us take data on the spot so we can adapt in those lessons rather than wait until after the lessons, wait until we've looked at books and those kind of things. So we've kind of stripped it back, and some schools are ready to move a little bit quicker. Some schools have bought into it. Some schools have adapted how they teach and found their own ways to go, but there's some really powerful tools in there. Where we're finding it having impact is, and we are very lucky, is we have a team of lead sort of digital learners, which I call the PedTech team. We always just drop the PedTech team in, but they support every school. So the school know, if we build it from the inside, they know that we understand the schools rather than taking in external people to help with that training. So the schools know that they have somebody who understands the school, who's going to be there.
Sorry, I'm just interrupting there. I think that is such a key aspect of a successful digital strategy, because you can't just keep spending money on external support all the time. There are times when you might have that, but the importance of building your own internal team is really, it's gold.
Yeah, and we're very lucky. We've got a range of experience across that team. We've got secondary, we've got primary, we've got those who have got experience of leading, those who are very creative, and we can bring all of that together. I guess it comes back from my experience of when I worked as an APLS. It was great. I could go into schools and I could work with them, but there was actually, they didn't have to do what I say. There was no accountability whatsoever. Whereas if we have our own team and the team understands the schools and the team are supporting a range of staff and they know what that looks like day to day in the various contexts, we can make our staff a little bit more accountable, and we can make sure that they understand why we're doing this and we're living and breathing our own vision. And I just think that makes all the difference, having that internal team. And the impact so far has been great. We've had staff who really didn't want to go with Showbie or iPad or anything. They were very happy with where they were at. And we have one member of staff who stands out. She said, I'm in my 50s. This is new. There's no way that I can do this. After 6 weeks of support, she said, don't take this away from me. This is easier than I've ever had it before. She's like, I can pinpoint what's going on in my class at any moment. I can get feedback. I can assess. I can adapt the learning. I can change things. And everybody has the same access and it's equitable for everybody. And she says, but also I'm not stuck at the front of a classroom. I'm no longer the person who imparts the knowledge. I facilitate what's going on in this classroom. And I think that's really powerful.
And you're part of the PedTech group as well, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I know there's lots of different schools with different contexts and different technologies that are kind of part of that group. So I think to the audience, it'd be great to hear a little bit.
So we joined the National PedTech Partnership, which is led by Dr. Fiona Aubrey-Smith. The reason that I was so intrigued by it is I think it's really important that we're always learning as well. And we learn from each other and we ask questions and we always look to improve. We might be very knowledgeable, we might have a lot of experience, but sometimes you need that kind of trusted network.
Of course.
And somebody to ask the questions and somebody to challenge you as well. So wanting to join this amazing, it's quite a large sort of network, but we wanted to have input which would be fed back, which might change the way education looks across the landscape in the UK. And we felt that if we were part of this team, we wouldn't just be on the journey, we'd be helping to shape the journey. And I think that just the wealth of experience when you meet up with people and the impact that it has and how it reinvigorates you and excites you and helps you think about your own context is fantastic. So we joined that June last year, and it's been a real game changer because it's helped me personally look at things in so many different ways. Obviously, there's lots of buzzwords out there, and AI is taking over, and
Of course.
all those kind of things. But when you get together in that partnership with like-minded people who are all there for the same goal to improve the lives of their, I wouldn't just say their kids, their families, their cohorts, their communities, it really helps you to hone in on what's important. And through AI, it's been really interesting to listen to every school's own experiences of it and how they've adapted. And actually, I'd say the biggest takeaway from me from that partnership so far has been the human element.
Yeah.
Technology doesn't replace anything. It's not a silver bullet. It can enhance and it can really be the enabler, but actually the human element is still the person in that room and the relationships. And I think that's helped me frame things in a totally different way. But it's been such a valuable network.
That's really quite powerful. I think that human element it's a big thing, and the more I think about it, the more organizations and schools that I work with, it kind of comes into play again and again and again. It's like a teacher at the front of the room can tell the mood of a class, the way they've walked in, how they've sat down. If it's been raining outside and the behavior of the children, they can pick it up, they can adjust things in the class. That human connection is just so powerful. And I think if technology is kind of used as a means of kind of communicating that human value, then that use of technology can be just as powerful. So like verbal feedback in class, for example, if I can do that with voice notes, I can do it in class verbally, but if I want to give verbal feedback to a student that's not in class and the text allowing me to do that, then, why not? So I think the humanistic element is so powerful.
I agree. And I think just picking up on, just to go back to this sort of journey and different schools being at different stages with Showbie, I think, which probably Paul wouldn't bring up, I think one of the most critical elements is so for example, we had 2 early adopter schools, who were one-to-one before Paul's appointment. I was quite proud of them, Abdul. Paul had to really come in and use that human element to say to me, Sally, this is substitution you're looking at. This is not, do you know what I mean, successful integration of Showbie. This is not change in pedagogy. And that was a light bulb moment for me. And actually, those 2 schools have been harder to move in terms of their practice, because once you already in habits, you already think something's working well, you're not seeing the art of the possible. Is it seeing the art of the possible? What it is actually is just that substitution, I don't remember, but you will, Abdul, changing blackboards to whiteboards, all of that, changing textbook to an iPad, not fundamentally changing the way that we teach. So I don't know about you, but I actually think they've been more, difficult to move on the journey than the sort of rollout of new schools. To see
I would agree with that. But I think we had a clear vision and a clear strategy from the start, so they could understand why they need to change. And they are changing.
Absolutely.
But I think the rate of change is maybe, it appears slower because they've been embedded that little bit longer. But I think it's as well, it's not only, but a phrase my wife uses all the time, if you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. And I think it's seeing what else could we do that might enhance this learning. And I think that's really helped to drive the development of the curriculum in those schools as well.
I mean, like, to build consistency, it takes time. And often what happens is technology comes in, everybody wants to do everything, and then you lose the consistency, but you get pockets of good practice happening here and there. And I think what I love about that pedagogical approach is we're introducing it as a pedagogical basis. So if it's direct instruction, it's not about the device, or it's not about Showbie, or it's not about any other platform or an app. What we're actually looking at is direct instruction. And this is the research that makes a difference. But these are the tools that we're going to use to basically deliver that consistently across
Yeah.
the trust. And I think that, and getting that embedded, it's worth spending the time and taking it slowly to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think you need to be very careful about what you choose first, and it needs to speak to your teams.
Absolutely.
So, we were knocking at an open door because we just needed to say to our teams, what is your biggest challenge?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine being a teacher standing up in front of 30 children, 12 of whom have got really, lots of gaps due to persistent absence, 6 of whom have English as an additional language, another 4 international new arrivals. You say to the team, what is your biggest challenge?
Yeah.
Being able to, so there we go. We're knocking on an open door. Accessibility, that's the first thing we're going to do. It's
Absolutely.
the first thing we're going to do with technology. And, then straight away, our fantastic teams, they're on board. They can see it works. How else? And you look back now and you think, how did they teach at the front of the classroom, clicking through 35 PowerPoint slides to 30 children who have such acutely different needs?
And you must have seen, like, taking accessibility. I'm going to come on to SEND in a minute, but the accessibility aspect, you must have seen a significant impact and change from an accessibility perspective for students and the equitable access.
Huge. And you see it in, we're sick of talking now, aren't we, about behaviour versus conduct. And so many people still talk about behaviour in a conduct sense. But when we talk about behaviour, we used to look into classrooms and think, how many of these children are inwardly truant in? They're not actually causing anybody any problems, but they're not there. They're not present. They're not engaged.
I love that inwardly truant.
And they're just getting through the hours. But now it's a feeling, Abdul, and sometimes you can't quantify it, but it's that buzz, it's that, it's a buzz, engagement, that sort of, I think to Paul's point earlier, not that teacher standing at the front of the classroom having to be that director all of the time. We walk into classrooms, can't find the teacher, and that's where you truly know that every child can be engaged and every child is now able to access learning. You feel it.
Let's talk a little bit about SEND, because I've been speaking about this to lots of CEOs. I was speaking to Leora Crudis, the CEO of the CST as well, getting her opinions of this. I think I went to the CST conference. That was the national one that happened last year, and it was kind of interesting. I think you were there as well, right? And it was interesting to listen to the government. But if I was to sum it up, and I could be wrong, feel free to call me out, but it's like, this is the problem, but we haven't got money to fix it, but we're going to kind of keep going kind of thing, yeah? And I think trusts are typically getting to a point where they're trying to figure out their own way of kind of dealing with this, right? And we can't wait for a national injection of finance or money. Like, that's probably not going to happen. So what does that look like? And how are you kind of, I suppose, dealing with that as a crisis, if you want to call it a national crisis? How is Laidlaw Trust kind of dealing with that? And does digital have a role to play in it?
Yeah, interestingly, we had our first inspection under the new toolkit in December, and the HMI said in the feedback around SEND and inclusion, this is a trust who lead, not plead, because we anticipated this crisis. So when I first joined the trust, I proposed a SEND and inclusion strategy, 3 dimensions to that strategy. One was around accessibility, universal offer, including a digital strategy. The second one was around groundbreaking facilities. Far too many of our young people who are in crisis are trying to be regulated in corridors, in cupboards, even in the most undignified spaces, when they need really, expert regulation, expert intervention, to be able to then be integrated and access learning again. So the second element was around groundbreaking facilities, and the third element was around we've internalised our own inclusion team, just as we've done with the PedTech team. And I know we are very, very fortunate in terms of the backing of the Laidlaw Foundation, who provide sponsorship for us. And we've been able to do that with their financial backing and support. So having our own educational psychologists, having our own lead practitioners for social and emotional mental health needs, ASD, and it really generates that, it's not somebody else's business.
Yeah.
It's our business, and it's our core business, and it's not just a bolt-on. So our Skylight Send strategy really supports all of that. And the digital element of it, as you mentioned earlier, it's all around the accessibility. It's all around personalisation. It's all around, and we get it right for children with additional needs. We get it right for everyone.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that's the way that we view it.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I think it's really important as well that digital is not seen as a bolt-on. It should underpin everything that we do. And in our vision, we've got 3 strands. One of them is to improve the communication and the workflow of staff and students. And through digital, that really helps to enhance the communication. The most important one is personalised, accessible learning. And it's a major passion of mine, making sure every child has their needs met. And more importantly, they have a voice in the classroom. So we work really closely with that Send and Inclusion team, and the PedTech team work really closely to make sure that all of the tools that are available to support those needs are widely known across the trust. So lately what we've been doing is we've been working with the Send team, and we've been looking through our Send registers, working with students, highlighting what tools might support those students. And then we've been working with those students and doing one-to-one and showing them where that might fit in, rather than just kind of saying, oh, by the way, there's a tool.
Yeah.
We talk to them, we engage with them. And it's all about building that confidence as well, because they don't want to rely on having things done for them. You don't want to put your hand up and say, I can't do this. But if we give them the tools, it increases that independence, it increases that confidence, it makes them be part of learning and become a lifelong learner. And that goes back to the character skills that we have. And how important they are. And I just feel accessibility is at the core of everything that we do. And there is a phrase that I heard at AD Institute in 2017, and it stuck with me. And I think this is what really drove that kind of second core of our vision. And it's necessary for some, but it's great for all. So if we can model that, these tools, you might need to use them, but I'm going to use them as well because it's a good thing for me to use. So what we're doing is we're approaching our staff and encouraging our staff to use those tools as they teach. So show how you can dictate with your voice, and you can dictate a sentence. Show how you can use Siri to, have something appear for you or check something. Use the spoken content, those types of tools. And we're really encouraging, because it's not only students, we have really diverse staff as well that also need those as well.
Very true. What data points are you kind of using at Laidlaw to be able to kind of, verify that the impact is happening? Whether that's kind of like the Showbie impact report stuff or qualitative, quantitative. How do you know that the journey and the direction of travel is impactful?
2 years ago now, when I took over as CEO, the trustees were instrumental. They're all such a great group of people, because they're so encouraging around being brave, doing things differently, doing what is ethically right, and yes, we will always have the pressure of exam results. We know how to track exam results.
We're very good at that.
We're very good at that. We're very good at weighing that. So alongside all of the sort of standard stuff, attendance, behaviour, suspensions, exam results, we developed a balanced scorecard because I firmly believe in we measure what matters. And so our balanced scorecard now incorporates skills, character skills. So we use the Skills Builder framework to track quantitatively the progress of character skills across the 8 domains. So we know we can pinpoint where there are weaknesses across the character skills. Then we intervene, just like we would in maths. We also track digital skills, so digital literacy framework that Paul has developed, so that we know where children are in sort of their stages of development around digital fluency. We track health and well-being using the Good Childhood Index and compare that to nationals so that we know where children are in terms of their feelings about themselves, their value in themselves, their contributions to society. We also track co-curricular, which I know a lot of places do now, and also, co-curricular participation, but we can then correlate that to attendance, sense of belonging, character skill development, which I think is really important. And we've just started a partnership with Oxford University, who are going to support us in creating a longitudinal study around co-curricular and character, so that we can see, when we're using external partners, what is the impact and what is the return in the broadest sense in terms of student outcomes on further enrichment that we're bringing into the academy. So that's really exciting.
Wow, really powerful. I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier about oracy and that language development and so on. It's just something that came to mind. Actually, it's one of the most kind of powerful things that gives an employer the first impression of a person, and a lot of the decisions that are made is through that kind of first impression of how a student or a child speaks or employee speaks and how they come across and so on, potentially opening doors to lots of other things. So I think the character education thing is hugely powerful, and those skill sets that are kind of built in. Are you working with employers to kind of look at that as well?
Yes, yeah. So we're also working with Voice 21 around our oracy program. The way we've approached our relationships with employers is new and evolving. So we've just launched a pilot program which we're going to unroll across all of our clusters in Sunderland, in Pennywell. So Bridget Phillipson came to launch the Fellowship of Education back in September, and the Fellowship of Education is really designed. It's not a trust thing; it's a place-based thing. Okay. So we're working with schools across the Pennywell area in Sunderland who are not part of our trust, but right. I'm not in the game of competing trust to trust. I'm in the game of collaboration. We've got different neighbouring schools, but we've got cousins who attend each of the schools. We've got brothers and sisters who attend each of the schools. So it's about time we work together. But with employers, I get a little bit frustrated with hearing about, about workforces not being ready, about young people not being sufficiently qualified in terms of their character. And the fellowship is designed to bring together employers, civic partners, community groups, really under the umbrella of a child's education is everybody's responsibility. So don't tell us what is wrong. Let's be part of the solution. So it's a really innovative, brave idea, and it's a way of employers and partners being able to contact the schools being able to contact them under a commons platform, but actually doing something really meaningful, not a one-off, nice to do. Yeah. So rather than you come in and just talk in an assembly, well, that's great, but then can you provide mentoring? Can you provide work placements? Is there a really sort of longevity to this partnership that we can provide? So the Fellowship of Education is doing that in Sunderland at the moment, and we're trying to codify a blueprint that would be able to be adopted by other local authorities, and we're certainly going to roll it out into Newcastle and Durham moving forward.
Wonderful. Last question from me, and then if we want to add anything we can. But Sally, from a multi-academy trust MAT perspective, like, are other MAT leaders getting curious about digital, about your approach and so on? Is that something that you're kind of seeing increase across England?
Undoubtedly. I think people are now no longer asking why, they're asking how. Yeah. I think, I hope we're sort of into the into the realms of the how, and I think people are convinced by the message. They're just not necessarily sure on the execution, and that's why you need a Paul Tullock, because you need to have a very, very clear direction of and vision for what you are actually trying to achieve through digital, because, as I say, putting devices in the hands of kids will just create a substitution unless we're really, really clear about what we want to achieve in terms of the shift in pedagogy, reducing workload for staff, and accessibility, which is absolutely core for us. So I would always say to people, strategy first and then the implementation afterwards.
Just to add on that, obviously it was Bet last week and we had many conversations, but just wandering around and talking to people, just exactly the same. How are you doing what you do? And we've just been talking to lots of different places and just saying, it's not how we're doing it, it's why are we doing it? What's your focus? And if we bring it all back to that, it becomes clear how we can make those changes to actually have lasting impact. So a lot of trust leaders, we were having conversations last week, and they're just keen to. There's a marked rise in how to implement this, and that interest in it, and we're just keen to not only showcase what we're doing, but invite people in to have those conversations.
Yeah.
We won't always get it right. We won't always get it right first time. We're on a journey as well. We're not the finished article. It will never be the finished article. We'll always keep evolving. We'll always keep changing, especially the more that we work with employers. That is only going to develop over time. But by having conversations with other trusts and other leaders as well, then we can make some real change, and hopefully that will drive at, I would say, the national level, and it might become the norm, and then that gets the support, and then it's not extraordinary what we're doing, but it does have extraordinary.
I suppose a bit like Scotland, where you've got whole councils and swathes of the country that has kind of gone down that route. I always used to give this example a long time ago that probably about 10 years ago, it was all about the taps, and what I mean by that is people would just give out devices, the shiny stuff, and then we turn it on and we expect water to come out.
Yeah,
but no one's thought about the plumbing. And I think it's becoming increasingly more obvious now that people are beginning to talk about the plumbing before they talk about the taps kind of thing, that we need to have that in place. And I think that whole kind of that strategic approach, all the things that you've spoken about today, Sally, that the implementation, Paul, I think like it's all of that together that really kind of delivers the water, basically. So
well, that is the exact question. Somebody came up to me at Bet and said, we're this trust, we've got this amount of money. If we were going to put devices in, what would you recommend? And I said, it's not about what device you use. It's like, you need to go all the way back. It's like, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? What problem are you trying to solve? And then exactly the same. If you get the plumbing right, it doesn't matter what it comes out.
Absolutely. Look, guys, thank you very much for coming in today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm sure it will be hugely valuable for people that watch the podcast and kind of take that knowledge and wealth of information experience from you as well. So I just want to say a big thank you for coming in today and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having us. It's great to see you as ever.
Thank you.
Thanks.